Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to All in Texas Football. Time to start up our game week previews. I know it sounds a little crazy, but these are our preseason game week previews, and we're going to dive right into it. Texas versus Ohio State. This preview was brought to you by good friends at Advanced Pain Care. We'll give you a message from our friends over at Advanced Pain Care a little bit later on in the show. But joining me on this wild ride will be the lifetime Longhorn, the young prodigy CJ Vogel, as well as my esteemed colleague and co-worker and good friend, the newest member of the On Texas Football family, my man Jeff Howe. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Gentlemen, let's get right into it. I don't even know the last time the Longhorns had a game, a week one opponent of this magnitude, but this is a huge one. Not only defending champions, but you got to go to Ohio State. To what's the big storyline, the biggest storyline for you before we start diving into some of the X's and O's and some of the strategy and scheme for both sides? Jeff, I'll start with you. What's the big storyline in your opinion of this matchup?
To me, I want to see two things, but it's really one. Where are the lines of scrimmage? I want to see where that offensive line is coming out of camp and that defensive line, because the Texas run game / offensive line against the Ohio State defensive front is going to be a really, really interesting battle because both those sides lost a lot. I mean, when you look at the draft, we're talking about, Tyleik Williams for Ohio State, just kind of go down the list of the guys they lost. JTT, Jack Sawyer, those guys are gone. We know Kelvin Banks is gone. Texas having replaced Cam Williams, also Jake Majors, who started more games than anybody in the history of this program. So a lot of faces that we know, but faces that, haven't been maybe in this prominent a role in terms of being like an opening game starter in a game of this magnitude. So, and with Cole Hudson, it's about making that transition to center. So I want to see that. And plus, what's the Ohio State run game going to look like? I have no idea, because you lost some linemen to the draft. 1, 2, you lost both your big-time running backs. Judkins and Travion Henderson are both gone. And for Texas, can you stop the run? I'll tell you something that's interesting, Rod. I got to, coaches right now we're starting to see the preseason magazines come out, and coaches always get hit up for, hey, give us an anonymous take on team X, fill in the blank, like what makes them special. I got word, somebody sent me what an SEC coach had said about Texas, and it was really complimentary. He said the thing that made Texas so good in our league year one is they were one of the very few teams in our league that can stop the run effectively and stay in the too high shell. So is it going to be a deal where, do we see Texas roll even? I know this is more kind of football theory stuff. Do we see Texas play even more single high safety and get an extra guy in the box? Or can that rotational group of defensive tackles, can they stop the run on their own? Or do we see a Cole Brevard or a couple guys emerge as, all right, these are going to be our guys? There's a lot of intriguing storylines in the line of scrimmage, Rod, but that to me is where it's all about, is the guts of the game right there.
CJ, what's your big storyline in the matchup?
Yeah, it has to be quarterback. It's Arch Manning's first road start as the starting quarterback of the University of Texas. Of course, the Arch era officially starts in Columbus, and Ohio State coming off of that national title victory, well, they're trotting out someone that's not Will Howard, who just helped lead them to that national championship and win over Texas in the college football semifinal. So will it be Julian Sain? Will it be Lincoln Kienholz? Right now, the belief is it's going to be Julian Sain, but they're in a tough spot, as is Texas to an extent, right? A lot of inexperience at the quarterback spot. You look at what Lincoln Kienholz was able to do, only 111 career passing yards so far through 3 years, and Julian Sain only 84 passing yards in 2024. A lot of inexperience at the quarterback position, but the talent surrounding both sides of the ball for both teams certainly going to be in abundance. But the quarterbacks are going to be the biggest thing that I'm going to be watching, because we've seen it year in, year out, all the way from the start of this sport. You have a good quarterback, it doesn't matter what's around you. They can elevate the game and take over.
Well, if you go back to the last time Texas and Ohio State played a regular season home and home, 05 and 06, to CJ's point, the quarterback decisions or battles, however you want to categorize it, made the difference in the game. Not just Vince Young's performance in Columbus in 05, but keep in mind, Troy Smith had gotten in trouble that offseason. Justin Zwick started that game. And I think a lot of Ohio State fans thought at the time, and definitely as the season went on, hey, we probably had the wrong quarterback playing against Texas. The following year, it's Troy Smith's team when Ohio State comes to Austin, ranked number 1 in the country, and it's Colt McCoy's second start. And even though Texas lost that game pretty convincingly, it was a 24-7 final. I think even in a losing effort coming out of that game, I think everybody felt like, you know what? It wasn't his day today, but you felt really good about this kind of the stuff Colt McCoy was made of coming out of that game. But it was just redshirt freshman, second start, and you were facing a defense loaded with NFL guys. So I'm kind of with CJ from an Ohio State standpoint. Whoever starts that game might not necessarily be their guy by the time they get to the end of the regular season.
But whoever starts the game for Ohio State, and we can kind of start the breakdown there, they're in a great position, right, to be successful because they have a juggernaut of a wide receiving room. This is arguably the best position room in the country they're going to be throwing to. So to me, they got a new offensive coordinator, right? Brian Hartline. That's another storyline there, right? 2 new coordinators on offense and defense. Let's start on the offensive side for them. But I watched a little bit of Julian Saying, and I mean, I like him. He was accurate. Throws the ball with touch, throws the ball with anticipation. I didn't necessarily think he was special, but I didn't think Will Howard was special either at K-State, and the talent and the scheme seemed to lift Will Howard's play to another level and turn him into kind of, Will the Thrill Howard instead of Will Spill the Pill Howard. So that's the thing. I think Texas' biggest advantage in this matchup, because I can't say that they don't have an advantage going against that wide receiving core. I don't know how you defend all those wide receivers. They did a great job of it last season, but they also had the Thorpe Award winner and then another second-round pick in that secondary, first-round and second-round pick in that secondary that's also gone. They got a lot of talent, but that is a Herculean task. Pass rush.
Yeah.
Pass rush. I watch Saying, and I think Saying's going to, be good in that system. And if it's Kine Holtz, he'll be fine in that system too, just because of the talent around him. But we've seen it on every level, college and pro. Pressure can really topple any scheme, any talent, no matter what you got at quarterback. I think that's where Texas has the ultimate advantage.
Yeah, it's really interesting looking at that game last year and how the NFL draft played out. Well, the last pick in the draft for Texas was Quinn Ewers, and the last pick in the draft for Ohio State was Will Howard. So hypothetically, you throw out the argument that both teams were kind of held back by the talent at the quarterback position. And to your point, Rod, what Ohio State will be able to trot out in that starting 11 at wide receiver, no one in the country can match that. Texas getting close, not quite there, and I don't think anybody else in the country, maybe Oregon, has has really an argument, right? You start looking at Jeremiah Smith, the number 1 player in the country for 2024. He was the number 1 wide receiver. You go back a year, you got Carnell Tate, the number 22 overall player in that cycle, the number 3 wide receiver. His running mate in that class, Brandon Ennis, we didn't see a lot of them last year, but the number 5 wide receiver in the class of 2023 and the number 35 overall player. You're talking about 3 borderline 5-star kids all in that starting rotation, all of which was starting experience coming back. So you don't need to be transcendent if you're Julian Saying, right? You just got to get the ball to where it needs to go on time. And that's, again, easier said than done. But the superhuman, team on your back plays, you didn't see a lot of that last year from Will Howard. And, we've seen it from Georgia when they went back-to-back. You didn't need a big-time superstar quarterback to get you over the finish line. But if you lose a lot of pieces like Ohio State did and like Texas did, it sure would help if you had that superstar under center to make sure that you have more leeway and a longer leash there. Also, Max Clare, the transfer from Purdue, we need to single him out. 685 receiving yards a year ago. Texas brought him in for a visit. Obviously, he ends up in Columbus. Texas brings in Jack Indries. That's going to be a fun back and forth, the 2 transfer portal tight ends before this game gets going.
Yeah, it goes back to quarterback, though, because Will Howard was a veteran guy and could take what the defense gave him. And while Texas pretty much shut down Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate and Emeka Ibuka combined in that game, guys, they were about almost 140 yards, and it was 138 on 12 combined catches. So especially Ibuka, it seemed like every time Ohio State had a big third down, it was Howard to Ibuka, boom, and they're moving the chains. So I think it's Carnell Tate and Brandon Ennis. I think those are the guys you got to worry about. I mean, yeah, stretching the field, but your third down defense is going to be massive in this game and how you play the chains. So I think it's those other guys. All eyes are going to be fixated on Jeremiah Smith, no question. But those other 2 guys, and then CJ brings up a great point with Max Clare. He was a guy Texas, the tires on. They decided to pass. Maybe if they knew what Amari Niblack was going to do at that point, maybe they would have pressed harder. But hey, it wasn't a fit. It didn't work out. He's at Ohio State, and Texas has Jack injuries now. So that's another thing you can do in this game is compare the tight ends to which one has the bigger impact. But I think at the end of the day, as crazy as this is going to sound, I'm not so much worried about Jeremiah Smith because he's going to get his, and how important he is. It's what do you do with those other guys in terms of making sure they're accounted for, and whoever's throwing the ball for Ohio State, do they have the kind of patience to take what the defense gives them? Or, Rod, to your point, can PK dial it up, frustrated, inexperienced quarterback? And then we've seen this defense the last couple of years. When teams start turning it over against them, man, those turnovers can pile up fast when you're playing against Texas.
Yeah, no, it is. To me, I think that's, ultimately one of the advantages, I think, for Ohio State in this matchup. I talked about, I think, Texas pass rush against their offensive line. They got a really impressive transfer out of Rice, I think, to play left tackle for them. Ethan, I'm going to mispronounce his name, and I don't want to. Omin Nava. I'm sure I probably screwed that up, and I apologize to him for that. But he's going to play left tackle for him. And actually, the reports were he was a projected NFL draft pick, mid-round pick, even last year at Rice. Transfer to Ohio State, only going to help his stock. It's going to improve. So he's no scrub. And the other tackle, the right tackle, at least projected right tackle to him, Austin, I believe it's Sarkisian. Is how they pronounce his name. He's a guy that was a swing player from played right guard, play left guard. They're saying he could play tackle as well. And some of them have him projected to be the right tackle. Either way, I just think Texas has a huge advantage with the depth and the talent at edges there. But one of the advantages for Ohio State is going to be, we don't know, and Sark and PK don't either. You don't really know what Brian Hartline is going to bring to the table as an offensive play caller. You have no idea. They're going to get the ball to Jeremiah Smith. Yeah. That we know. We know that. Carnell Tate, we know that. We know, I'm with you, Max Clare. So at least you know the weapons you got to take away, but you have no idea schematically in terms of creatively how he's going to try to get them the football. That's a huge advantage. There's a sample size on Sark and PK now. You got 4 years of a sample size. You know what they want to do. You know what they're trending toward, all that kind of stuff. Hell, you got a channel like On Texas Football that'll track it for you. All right, you got all that. What you don't have is really any type of sample size on what Brian Hartline, and then you got a new starting quarterback at that. He's got to elevate, and what that combination looks like. I know we don't know what Arch and Sark's offense looks like, but we know what the nuts and bolts of Sark's offense. Yeah. We know the main ingredients. We have no idea what their Hartline is going to bring to the table. They just know what to take away. And I do think for at least the first half, maybe even the first quarter, maybe it's not the entire half, that could be an advantage for Ohio State.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting underlying storylines for this is this kind of resembles that 2023 Alabama game, right? New offensive coordinator, Chip Kelly departs. New defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles heads to Penn State. New quarterback, Will Howard off to the NFL. That's a good team. That's a good program. There's a lot of talent there, but it's a brand new system for the most part on both ends of the ball. And I say brand new offensively. I know that Ryan Day remains, and that offense was kind of his baby. Yep. To bring in a Chip Kelly and allow him to have free reign on the offense was something I'm sure he did not want to do. But they're going to go back to what was the Ryan Day offense, the Ryan Day system under Brian Hartline. It's just going to have Brian Hartline's twist. Now, to your point, when we talk about Colin Simmons, Anthony Hill, Trey Moore, Brad Spence, these guys getting after the quarterback, does that rattle not just the quarterback, but the play caller himself? I think it's worth asking because, the bullets come quick when you're under fire. And Texas has a lot of firepower in that front seven. I can only imagine that as a play caller for a first game of this magnitude, it's not going to be easy.
I've heard from enough coaches, to your point, CJ, you think it's going to be you think this transition is going to be whatever it is, but it's similar to playing quarterback. You don't know how you're going to react until you've got the call sheet and it's your duty to send in a play on 3rd and 3, and you're hoping all the work you did in the offseason and in game prep that it's the right call. And I mean, if it gets away from you and you start grab bagging, or the other thing, hey, you can hit a few and then you get in the flow and it's rolling. We don't know how, and Ryan Day is going to have a really big part in it, but we don't know how Brian Hartline is going to manage the game. That's another thing we don't know. The other thing too, Rod, with Ohio State, when you look at their personnel, again, CJ just hit on it. Like, we're not talking about like little sisters of the poor. It's Ohio State. Like, yeah, they lost a lot, but their backups, their newcomers, they've got plenty of NFL talent on that roster. James Peoples at running back is a San Antonio kid, so we'll see what he brings to the table. But I want to see what Brian Hartline and Ryan Day do with C.J. Donaldson, who was a really versatile player for Neil Brown at West Virginia. Can do a little bit of everything. Kind of came up as a wide receiver, has been a running back, but you can do a lot of different things with him, especially if it's going back to more of the kind of Ryan Day power spread offense, which basically, if you go back to before last season, Ryan Day, he just continually built on that power spread offense that Urban Meyer had. I think that was a big thing too with bringing in Chip Kelly as the offensive coordinator. Chip Kelly's called plays before, so he could get in the rhythm. He knew how to get himself out of a jam, and you're not grab bagging and things can get away from you. So I know I'm all over the place with that a little bit, but I want to see, is Ohio State prepared to kind of unleash a guy like C.J. Donaldson, or is this a deal where we look, Rod, 5-6 weeks after this game and watch Ohio State and what they're doing with C.J. Donaldson and say, man, I'm glad they hadn't figured that out by the time they got ready to play Texas that first game?
No, that's a good point, because I'm with you. We know PK, number one, wants to stop the run. There's no secret about that. They're going to stop the run, number one, and force you into predictable passing situations. So if they can stop the run, it'll be interesting to see if PK, I always say sometimes, you got to play the man and not the hand in poker. Same thing in football. Sometimes you got to play the man, the person that's you're matching wits with on the other side, more so than necessarily playing the scheme. And I wonder if PK, with a first-time play caller, will try to incite some of that panic you're talking about there. Jeff, you know what I mean? In situations, try to get him to freak out a little bit as a first-time play caller. I like that idea. That's really interesting. James Peoples and C.J. Donaldson, I think they'll end up being a good running back combo. It's all about that interior offensive line, which for them is a strength. I believe their returning center is coming back. The starting center is coming back and returning. Hintzman, he was a guy that started at center for him, I believe, in 23, moved around in 24. He's going to be the starting center. And they bring back their left guard, who was a starter at year's end, and they bring back the right guard. So the interior of the offensive line for them, pretty experienced for the Ohio State Buckeyes. All right, let's jump to the other side of the ball and talk about the defense. And there'll be, first of all, how do you defend Arch Manning if you're Ohio State? That's probably the first question. What's your strategy? Just take away the deep ball, force Texas to beat you running the football with a lighter box?
It's funny because even though we could do a whole show on the deep ball with Quinn Ewers at quarterback and how there was just a lot of meat left on the bone, but it's funny that even though Texas wasn't an elite deep ball passing team, it's crazy to me how often teams protected against the deep ball. And it's like, all right, if you're going to give Quinn quick RPO throws, dude, he'll take those all day, every day. And I think we really saw Quinn grow into that kind of quarterback where, again, talking about a veteran quarterback, you learn, hey, just take what the defense gives you. You don't have to try to, make that Brett Favre home run highlight throw every time you drop back the pass where you're making that hole shot against cover 2 or whatever. You can take that check down or that quick screen or whatever it is and get you 5 yards, and you're on schedule, and the offense is moving. So again, the same thing we just said for PK and whoever's playing quarterback for Ohio State, Matt Patricia could try to do some of the same for Arch Manning. Arch has more experience than those Ohio State guys because he's at least started a couple of games. But in this environment, against this team, against the defensive coordinator, where I would imagine, Rod, you're watching a little bit of everything. You're probably watching some Lions tape. You're probably watching some old Patriots tape. You probably got your notes from last year in the Cotton Bowl, because the other thing we don't know, how much of Jim Knowles' defense is Matt Patricia going to keep? Is he just going to keep the framework and build on it and make it his own? Is he going to run the same scheme? Is he going to ditch it altogether? We don't know. So that's another advantage I think Ohio State has that Matt Patricia can use to his advantage against Arch. But I would think we'll see Ohio State protect against the deep ball and, again, see if Arch can have the patience to take what the defense gives them.
It's just like the offense, though, CJ. We don't know what the defense is going to do, how Matt Patricia's spin potentially on Jim Knowles' defense will be, if he'll abandon it all together and just implement his own scheme. But we know the players it's going to highlight. We know Caleb Downs will be the featured player on defense. We know Sonny Styles will be a featured player on defense. You kind of that you do know in the whatever scheme it is.
Yeah, we do. And sorry for the rain. It's going sideways right now on me in Austin. Hopefully it won't in Columbus this August. But point I wanted to make defensively, and, Ohio State's always going to have dudes, right? Georgia's always going to have dudes. Texas now in a position where they're always going to have dudes. There's always going to be one or two spots that you can take advantage of. And right now, that spot for Ohio State is Davison Igbinosun, one of the outside cornerbacks. 16 penalties last year. He had one against Texas. Texas didn't target him a whole lot last year. I was screaming pregame, hey, if he's on the field, target him because he gets handsy. He defensive holdings, pass interferences, 16 on a season, Rod. That's a lot. Texas's leading penalty getter last year was Colin Simmons with 6. So there you go. If you have 16 penalties, I'm targeting you. And if he's on the field again this fall, I would expect Texas to target him deep down the field. The other thing, and I know we mentioned defensive line, offensive line, the battle in the trenches. Ohio State in that semifinal in the Cotton Bowl, 25 pressures on the quarterback resulted in 5 sacks.
All right, sorry about that, folks. CJ did tell you there was a storm of brewing, and I guess it knocked out his power there. All right, let's finish up the conversation, though, about the Ohio State defense. I'll tell you why Matt Patricia is actually probably, a really good pick and selection for what Ryan Day envisions for this defense, because I do think he wants to keep some of the Jim Knowles elements. Why would you want to get rid of it? Right? Yeah. I think we all be like, man, keep some of it, whether it's the framework of it or whether some of the principles, whatever. Matt Patricia is famous for being multiple, like literally being so multiple that he really doesn't have an identity. He has tendencies and patterns, but he's thrown out a lot of different defenses throughout his years with the Patriots and with the Detroit Lions, and even short time with the Eagles. So he's done a lot of different things. So he can, and he's famous for saying, this is kind of one of my principles about football theory. You know this, Jeff. I'm going to build my defense around my talent. I'm not going to force my talent to have to change or transform their skill set to fit into my scheme. Yeah. And he's one of those guys. Like he has already said, no, I evaluate the talent first, then I just build the scheme basically around the talent. And he does that. So he's kind of one of those coaches that, if you will, every year kind of bakes from scratch rather than coming in with a Betty Crocker game plan already. This is cookie cutter. How is he going to do it? And at Ohio State right now, I think they want to build this thing from scratch a little bit with already the framework of Jim Knowles. They also kept Tim Walton as their co-DC. And I think that's for continuity. And they got some other pieces at the pass game coordinator. I think they kept around for continuity. So I believe that's the case, but we shall see. But Sonny Styles is a hell of a player, and Caleb Downs. Those are the two best players on the defense. No question, whether you're watching it or whether you're looking at, impact plays and havoc plays. Those two guys, they're special. They're going to play in the NFL. Caleb Downs is the best safety in college football. Sonny Styles is probably a top 10 linebacker in college football.
Yeah. I mean, you've probably got, between Styles, Downs, Colin Simmons, and Anthony Hill, that's 4 of what, Rod? Probably the best 15 defensive players in the country.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Damn, I haven't thought about that, but you're right.
Yeah. I mean, there's going to be some big time NFL talent on the field in this game.
Yeah.
The only thing I say in closing on just the Texas offense against the Ohio State defense, man, if I'm Matt Patricia, I devote more resources to defend, even though this Texas wide receiver group is relatively inexperienced. Because Ryan Wingo's only got the 1 year under his belt. DeAndre Moore is by far the most experienced guy in that room. I'm really excited about Emmett Mosley and what he brings to the table. But if I'm Matt Patricia, I protect against the deep ball, and I challenge Texas to run the football. Like, hey, last time you went against a team in that color jersey, you couldn't punch it in from first. You had first and goal at the 1. And not only did you not punch it in on 4 tries at point blank range, you turned the ball over and that ended the game. So let's see if you can line up and play football in a phone booth a little bit and smash around. And if I'm Texas, I kind of want that. I want to be able to answer that call and step up to that challenge. Especially, I talked about it a lot, and I'll continue to talk about it right all off season, all throughout the summer. Those 3 guys on the interior, Cole Hudson, DJ Campbell, and Neto, your center and your 2 guards. I think those guys can change the complexion of the run game because of their physicality and their ability to roll guys off the ball and reestablish the line of scrimmage. If they can get that going in this game and keep the offense on schedule without having to rely on Arch's legs to do it, that's going to put Texas in a really, really good position to win the ball game. And
that's also another question I have for Ohio State, because I do wonder where the pass rush is going to come from. They lost their entire D-line. I mean, 14 players drafted, lost the entire D-line. That defense was, decimated. That defense, man, they had 8 guys, I believe they lost on that defense. They had 3 DBs that were drafted, had a linebacker that was drafted, entire D-line. They got some dogs on defense, but they also got a lot of new pieces they're going to be working with, as well as a new defensive coordinator. All right, let's thank our friends over at Advanced Pain Care before we get done with today's preview. And our friends, actually, legendary lifetime Longhorns, Colt McCoy and Vince Young, have a very special message for you from our friends at Advanced Pain Care.
Pros know the pain stops here.
Physical therapy helps me as an athlete then and now. And do I still need therapy? Yes. Advanced Pain Care helps with that.
Injuries will stack up. They'll add up. You can't let those injuries get you down, and Advanced Pain Care has been very helpful for me.
We can help with whatever's got you down, from nerve damage to our spinal cord stimulator. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Same-day appointments available.
Advanced Pain Care. The pain stops here.
All right, Jeff, I'm not going to ask you to give an official prediction yet because it's way too early. You got to do more research, and we'll have another, obviously, game week preview when that comes out and probably give predictions then. But where you leaning already? Are you leaning one way or the other in this matchup?
I'm leaning towards Texas just because of Ohio State having to go through. Now, I'm not saying Texas is going to Columbus and winning the game by 40, so don't get it twisted. But I just feel like that's a lot of changes for Ohio State to make in a matter of months and be ready to face and beat a team as talented as Texas. And Sark has proven time and again, Rod, ever since that Arkansas debacle year 1, which we just kind of chalked that up to, the more I think about that game, it's almost like Sark sent a message to everybody like, I told you guys, if you mess around and go to Fayetteville and you're not prepared, you're going to get your brains beat in, and that's what happened. But that's a conversation for another day. But Bama in 22 and 23, Michigan last year, Sark has been so good at coming up with game plans for those early season games because of how much he puts into it during the summer. Right now, Sark's working on Ohio State. I guarantee, he's not thinking about anything. And that's great because, you want to treat your opener with respect. Well, yeah, guess what? Now you have to, because you're playing a defending national champion. So I'm leaning slightly toward Texas just because there's more known commodities on the Texas side of things. But I also think too, Rod, this is a really good measuring stick for Texas. Win or lose, all your blemishes are going to be exposed going into week 2. And I like the precedent that was set 2 years ago when Texas went into Tuscaloosa and beat Alabama. When it came time at the end of the season and granted, that was in the 4-team era of the playoff, the selection committee did not hold the loss to Texas against Alabama. Instead, they got credit for scheduling the game. It's like, hey, you were willing to go out and host Texas for your opener. You hosted the Big 12 champions. It's a one-loss team that's in the playoffs. So you go ahead. That was almost a trump card giving them the 4th spot. So when you get down to selection time and seeding time down the road, win, lose, or draw, this game is not going to be held against Texas.
Yep. No, I agree with you. I'm leaning Texas right now too, man. Sark is strong in them big-time non-cons as we've seen the last few years. All right. Thank you, Jeff, for the expertise. Appreciate it as always. Thanks to CJ as well. Hope he's doing well.
Check on our guy after this.
Yeah, gotta go check on him. Thank you, Matthew, behind the scenes. Always doing a great job. And thank you to our friends over at Advanced Pain Care. And for Jeff and for Matthew, I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Until next time, hook 'em horns.